Captain Elias Reeve stood straight-backed under the towering crystal arches of the Janari royal court, sweat beading under his collar despite the room's cool air. All around him, tall, silver-skinned nobles in flowing gowns whispered behind bejeweled hands, their glowing eyes fixed on the lone human standing before Queen Zalthea herself. The queen's throne was carved from a single amethyst crystal, jagged and beautiful like the empire she ruled. Her voice echoed cold and regal across the marble floor as she made her offer not of technology, trade, or land, but something far stranger. In the spirit of peace, I present to you my daughter, Princess Kailari. A collective murmur rippled through the court. Elias blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. The queen gestured, and from behind a curtain of violet silk, a figure stepped forward. Princess Kailari was smaller than her sisters, who stood smug and glittering at their mother's side. She wore no crown, no jewels, just a simple silver robe. Her eyes, violet and sharp, met Ilias's with quiet defiance. The queen continued, her tone sweet and poisonous. She is unburdened by position. Consider her a symbol of goodwill. Perhaps she can learn something from your primitive kind. The nobles chuckled softly. It was clear this was no honor. The queen was discarding a daughter she found useless, a piece too weak for her galactic game of power. Elias could feel the insult burning under his skin, but then he looked at Kailari again. She stood with her chin high, not pleading, not ashamed, just waiting for rejection, probably. But something about her stillness, the way she didn't flinch, struck him. This wasn't a gift. It was a challenge, okay? And humans didn't back away from those. I accept, Elias said, his voice calm and steady. The court gasped, the queen's smile twitching for just a second. Not as property, Elias added, as an equal envoy, a diplomat. More whispers, more shock. Even Kailari's eyes widened briefly. No Janari had ever called a human their equal, and no human had dared to claim the same of one of them. The queen tilted her head, crystalline earrings swinging. Very well, she is yours to take. Kailari stepped beside Elias in silence. As they walked through the grand hall, her presence beside him was like a shadow, unreadable, distant. The shuttle that carried them back to the human cruiser Odyssey's promise was quiet. Kailari sat in silence, watching the stars slip past through the viewport. Elias didn't try to speak. He knew better than to force conversation with someone who'd just been thrown away like a broken ornament, right? When they arrived aboard the ship, the crew didn't know what to make of her, an alien princess with no guards, no throne, no power, just quiet eyes and perfect posture. She was given quarters, and Elias made it clear to everyone she was not a prisoner, not a pet, not some royal baggage. They were to treat her with the same respect they gave to any diplomat. Kailari said nothing for days. She wandered the halls like a ghost, watching crew members train, eat, laugh. She observed everything with the cool detachment of someone cataloging a foreign world. She never asked questions, never made demands, until the fourth day, when Elias found her in the observatory, staring at a gas giant glowing amber in the void. Why? She asked suddenly, without turning. Why did you accept me? Elias leaned against the railing beside her, surprised. She'd spoken at all. 'Cause you're not a thing to be traded away. And I figured, if your mother wanted you gone that badly, you might be someone worth knowing. Kailari's lips twitched. Wait. A near smile. Maybe. In Janari culture, unwanted daughters are often married off, or sent to monasteries, never given to outsiders. Elias nodded. Human culture used to be like that too. We got over it. She turned to look at him, expression unreadable. You will regret this. But Elias only smiled. Maybe, but I don't think so. From that moment on, she began to change slowly, cautiously. She attended briefings, sitting silently at first, then offering small observations. Her voice was soft but precise. Her knowledge of Janari customs sharp and surprising. The ship intercepted a cryptic transmission from Valzer-S surface. Kalari stiffened and asked to see the message. It was heavily encoded, but her eyes widened as she scanned it. "This is not official royal communication," she said, quietly. "These symbols, Tyr, they're used by a faction loyal to my sister Valshera." Elias leaned forward. "What does it say?" Kalari hesitated. "They plan to disrupt the peace summit. Something violent. Can they plan to blame your people for it?" The words hung in the air like a blade. Elias felt a chill settle in his chest. "How do you know?" Kalari met his eyes. "Because I was never meant to see this. I recognize the encryption. It was taught only to heirs. My sister is making a move for the throne." Ke. Elias stood, already sending signals to his command crew. "Then we need to stop it." Kayari looked away, her expression troubled. "If I help you, I betray my blood." Elias didn't flinch. "Huh, and if you don't, we both walk into a trap that could ignite a war." She was silent for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then we need to go back, quietly, as Elias prepared the stealth shuttle." Huh? He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning and Adet, the quiet princess at his side, might be the most dangerous ally he'd ever had. Kalari moved through the halls of the Odyssey's promise, like a silent shadow, her steps graceful, her expression calm, yet her thoughts spinning in quiet chaos. Humans were nothing like she had expected. No arrogance, no loud declarations of superiority, no mocking smirks like the ones she had seen all her life in the royal court. Instead, the crew nodded politely when she passed, some even smiling, though she never smiled back. She did not understand them, not yet, and she did not trust kindness given so freely. Captain Elias Reeve remained distant but respectful, always including her in meetings, asking for her opinion even when she hesitated or gave short answers. He treated her not like a burden, not like a trophy, but like she mattered, and that unsettled her more than any insult could. In the Janari court, silence was her armor, invisibility her shield. She was the quiet daughter, the one they forgot. In grand speeches, the one left standing in the shadows while her older sisters basked in praise. But here, her words caused heads to turn. Her advice sparked new plans, and slowly, she began to speak more. Not much, but enough. It began with a small comment during a strategic briefing, a correction in the translation of a Janari military signal. Elias had paused, considered it, and acted on her suggestion. The move revealed a hidden troop movement on one of the moons, near Vales, exactly where Kalari said it would be. After that, officers began to seek her out for insight. She watched them with cautious eyes, waiting for the trick, the cruelty, but it never came. They were serious, direct, often informal in ways that confused her, but they listened. She began listening more, piecing together the way humans worked, how their chain of command allowed room for questions, how their loyalty was earned, not demanded. It fascinated her. Then came the transmission, the message she decoded that hinted at an attack from her sister's faction. The warning had been vague, but it was enough to stir fear in Elias's council. Now, every move they made was clouded with suspicion, and Kalari knew time was running out. Late one night, when most of the crew was asleep and the stars drifted silently past the viewing ports, Kalari stood alone in the ship's observatory. Elias entered quietly, not speaking at first, stood beside her, looking at the same stars. "You've changed the way my crew sees the Janari," he said softly, "and the way I see you." Kalari did not respond right away. Her voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. My mother saw no use for me. She called me quiet, unremarkable, forgettable. Elias looked at her with calm eyes. They were wrong. Her gaze shifted to his. If you're wrong about me, it could cost your people everything. Elias smiled faintly. I've made bigger bets with less to go on. Her lips pressed into a tight line, but she said nothing more. The next day, she requested access to the ship's diplomatic archives, claiming she might be able to identify traitorous language patterns from her sister's inner circle. Elias approved the request without hesitation. For hours, Kalari pored over files, translating phrases and comparing signatures. Her memory, long trained to observe details others ignored, began to detect patterns. Certain words used too often, seals placed incorrectly, subtle errors no proper royal agent would make. She presented her findings to Elias in a quiet room, filled with maps and glowing holoscreens. There's a network, she explained. Messages pass through merchant ships. They hide the orders in trade contracts. Elias frowned. I think the attack is coming during the summit. Kylari nodded. Okay, they'll make it look like you struck first. A false flag operation. Elias stared at the projections, tension in his jaw. Can we stop it? She hesitated. Not from here. We need to intercept the next courier ship. It docks in the lower ring of Velzer every 4 cycles. Elias gave the order within the hour. The stealth shuttle was prepped, with only a few trusted crew briefed on the mission. Kylari would accompany them, her presence essential too, unlocking certain encrypted access points on the surface. As they prepared to leave, Kylari stood at the edge of the loading bay, staring at the dark mouth of the shuttle. Elias approached her, adjusting his comlink. You don't have to come, he said quietly. You've done more than enough. She turned to him, eyes calm. If I stay, I remain invisible. If I go, I become seen. With that, she stepped into the shuttle, her choice made. The descent to Velzer's surface was tense, the atmosphere shimmering with light from the crystal towers below. They landed in a remote sector near an old merchant port. Kylari led them through back routes, her knowledge of the city's secret paths revealing a side of the empire even Elias hadn't seen. As they neared the communication center hidden beneath a market plaza, Kylari signaled them to stop. There will be guards, she whispered, but not Janari, my sister. Wouldn't trust our own kind for this. Sure enough, as they crept closer, they spotted 2 heavily armed mercenaries, reptilian, rough-skinned, not native to the empire. Elias and his team neutralized them quickly and quietly. Inside the center, Kylari moved with purpose, unlocking doors with a flick of her fingers and a whisper of her voice. Deep in the vault, they found the proof transmissions, payment records, orders for weapons disguised as food shipments. Elias stared at the glowing screen, anger boiling beneath his calm face. This could start a war. Kylari nodded. Unless we stop it before the summit begins. But as they prepared to leave, the lights flickered, and a cold voice echoed from the corridor. I should have known the little shadow would crawl out from her corner. It was Valshara, Kylari's older sister, her face appearing on the wall screen, flanked by royal guards. Did you think you could crawl to the humans and win, sister? You were given away for a reason. Kylari stepped forward, her voice clear and calm. And you're throwing away the empire to steal a crown you're not ready to wear. Valshara sneered. You don't belong on any throne. You never did. The screen cut out. An alarm blared. Elias turned to Kylari. We need to go. Now, as they ran through the tunnels, the echo of boots behind them grew louder. They dodged plasma fire, took cover, returned shots. Kylari moved with surprising speed and grace, guiding the team through narrow alleys and hidden lifts. When they reached the shuttle, breathless and bruised, Kylari paused before boarding. looking back once at the city of light. She won't. Stop, she said softly. Then we won't either, Elis replied. The shuttle lifted off, disappearing into the clouds, as the stars above welcomed them back. Kailari sat in silence, her hands tight in her lap, but her eyes burned with something new, not fear, not doubt, but a quiet fire that had waited too long to rise. The Odyssey's promise flew silently through the cold darkness of space, its engines a faint hum beneath the floor as the stars drifted slowly past its windows, but there was no peace on board. Not in the minds of its crew, and especially not in the heart of Kailari. She stood before the main display, watching the intercepted messages scroll across the screen, the words hidden in code, the patterns only she could read, her violet eyes sharp and steady. Elias stood beside her, arms crossed, his face calm but lined with tension. The evidence they had gathered on Vale's air was enough to prove Valshara's hand in the coming betrayal. Yet it wasn't enough to stop it, not yet. A conspiracy. This deep, needed light, and Kailari knew her sister's grip reached farther than any of them guessed. Valshara wasn't just hiding messages and trade deals anymore. She had placed agents inside the royal palace, loyalists posing as diplomats and servants, and even now, they were moving into position to strike during the upcoming summit between the Jannari and the human delegates. The summit would take place inside the Crystal Spire, the tallest and most sacred structure in the empire, its walls humming with ancient power, its floors lined with polished stone mined from the planet's heart. It was there that peace was supposed to be signed, but Kailari now feared it would become a trap where her people and Elias's would die together, lamed, framed, and destroyed in one sharp move by Valshara. She spent long hours in the strategy room, studying maps, satellite feeds, and guard rotations, piecing together movements that no one else had noticed. Elias watched her quietly, offering help only when she asked, letting her lead, because he knew this was her world more than his. It was during one of these long sessions that Kailari's eyes suddenly narrowed at a layout of the Crystal Spire's lower levels. "This is wrong," she murmured, pointing at a corridor. "This shouldn't exist." Elias leaned closer. "What do you mean?" She ran her finger along the wall's lines. "There is a vault beneath this section. It was sealed centuries ago, part of the ancient catacombs. Our people believe it to be a holy place, but it's never been mapped. Like this." She tapped a tiny mark. "And this, it's a new access point, recently added." Elias frowned. "You think that's where she's hiding her team?" Kailari nodded slowly. "Or weapons. Or something worse." Without wasting time, Elias ordered a full scan of the spire's underground layers, but the Jannari royal sensors blocked their efforts. So Kailari made a decision that surprised even herself. She contacted an old mentor from the palace archives, a blind historian named Mavir, who had once taught her about the old paths beneath the spire. Using an encrypted channel, she asked him for access to the old maps. Mavir, who had never judged her as others did, responded with a soft laugh and a simple warning. "What you seek has been forgotten for a reason, little star. But I will send what I can." The maps arrived as a flickering hologram, revealing a network of ancient tunnels far beneath the surface, forgotten by most, ignored by all. Kailari studied them, heart pounding. One of the tunnels led directly beneath the summit chamber, ending in a sealed room known only in legends as the Hollow Heart. It was there that she believed Valshara's plot would unfold. But there was no way to reach it through official channels. Too many eyes, too many risks. So Kailari proposed a plan. She and Elias would go down first with a small team under cover of darkness. Through a hidden path she remembered from childhood stories. Elias agreed, gathering only 3 others: Captain Lorne, their tech expert Dana, and a scout named Trin. They left the ship in silence, dressed in stealth gear, landing near the outer edge of the spire under a cover of electromagnetic interference. No one saw them enter the old maintenance shaft, and no alarms were triggered as they descended into the earth. The tunnels were cold and damp, lit only by the dim glow of Elias's wrist light and the occasional flicker of ancient stones that pulsed with soft blue energy. Silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of their boots on stone and the quiet hum of Kalari's voice guiding them through twists and turns. Hours passed, and the path narrowed, the walls pressing closer, the air growing colder. Finally, they reached a chamber with a massive sealed door covered in old Janari script. Kalari stepped forward and pressed her hand to the surface, whispering a prayer more out of habit than belief. The stone shimmered and shifted, revealing a passage beyond. What they saw made them stop. Inside the room were crates, metal and heavy, stacked with precision. Dana scanned them quickly. Explosives, she whispered, enough to level the summit chamber and everything above it. Elias's jaw tightened. This is it. This is the proof we needed. But Kalari was staring at something else, a device on the wall, sleek and pulsing with energy. It was not human, and it was not Janari. She stepped closer, her breath catching. This isn't ours, she said. This is alien. Elias joined her, studying the strange structure. You mean another species? Kalari nodded. Slowly. My sister didn't build this. She found it, and she plans to use it. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from the tunnel behind them. Trin signaled a warning, her hand flashing in code. Movement. Fast. They had been discovered. The team moved quickly, taking holoscans of the room, uploading the data to the Odyssey's promise. Kalari helped Dana disable the triggering mechanism, while Elias and Lorne covered the entrance. Shots rang out, not plasma, but something darker, heavier, unfamiliar. The air hissed with energy as shadows moved in the tunnels, humanoid shapes with glowing eyes. Those aren't Janari, Elias said, his voice cold. Kalari's blood ran cold. There, from the vault, from the device. My sister woke. Something ancient. They fought their way out, using smoke grenades and flash pulses to blind the attackers. Kalari moved with silent skill, guiding the team back to an alternate tunnel. One of the creatures lunged at her, its hands twisted like claws. But she ducked low and drove her blade into its chest, watching it vanish into ash. No one spoke until they reached the surface again, breathless and bloody, the sky above burning with pre-dawn light. Elias touched his comlink. We have the proof. And we have something worse. There's an unknown force under the spire. We're sending it all to command. Back aboard the Odyssey's promise, Kalari stood alone in the observatory, staring at the rising glow of her homeworld. She had uncovered her sister's lies, found proof of a plot, and discovered something no one had ever warned her about. But as the transmission sent off into the void toward Earth's high command, Kalari knew something deeper was stirring, something older than her people. Something hidden beneath the crystals, not just by time, but by fear. Her sister wanted a throne, but what lay beneath the spire could destroy more than a crown. It could destroy everything. The news of the hidden weapon beneath the crystal spire spread quickly through the command channels, but not fast enough to stop what was already coming. Kalari stood in the war room of the Odyssey's promise, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the real-time map of the summit site, where the gathering of Janari nobles and human diplomats was. Just hours away, unaware of the danger beneath their feet, Elias paced beside her, barking orders into his com, sending warning signals to Earth and the Allied fleet. But interference from the planet's shield systems was slowing everything down. Someone inside the palace was jamming outgoing messages, and Kalari didn't need to guess who it was. Velshera had taken control of the summit zone, locking down access under the excuse of royal protocol. and her voice now echoed through the planet's broadcast systems, calm and regal, announcing a celebration of peace while preparing for destruction. Kalari clenched her fists, anger and fear boiling beneath her calm surface. She had spent her whole life being ignored, pushed to the side, hidden behind veils and shadows, but now she stood in the center of a storm that could end not just her people, but humanity too. Elias turned to her, his face grim. They're not responding. If you don't act now, the explosion will go off during the signing ceremony. Everyone in the chamber would die, including the human envoy team. Kailari stepped forward, her voice firm. Then we go in ourselves. We take a drop team, breach the spire, and disarm the device. My sister thinks we won't dare interrupt a royal event. She doesn't know what humans are willing to do to protect their own. Elias nodded. Okay. And she definitely doesn't know you. Within minutes, the strike team was ready. Elias, Kailari, Dana, Lauren, and 4 elite soldiers trained for close quarters combat. They descended in a stealth shuttle, staging patrols and masking their signal beneath the static of the planet's energy field. The drop zone was a maintenance platform on the spire's outer shell, barely wide enough for the shuttle to land, and the only way inside was a vertical shaft that led straight to the underground vault. Kailari led the way, moving swiftly, her memory guiding them through the maze of tunnels, while the sound of the summit echoed faintly above the music of the speeches, the lies. Below, the air grew colder, heavier, filled with a strange hum that vibrated through their boots and settled in their bones. The alien device pulsed brighter now, its energy rising like a living thing, and Dana's scans showed it was seconds away from arming itself fully. As they reached the vault, they found it guarded, not by soldiers, but by the strange ash-like creatures that had attacked them before, now more aggressive, their eyes burning with unnatural light. The team fought hard, plasma bolts and blades flashing in the darkness. Kailari moved like lightning, her strikes precise, her mind focused. They cleared a path to the device, but as Dana moved to disable it, the wall behind them exploded, and Velshara stepped through, dressed in royal battle armor, her face twisted with triumph. You never knew your place, little sister, she sneered, raising her weapon. You should have stayed forgotten. Kailari stepped in front of Dana without hesitation. You're destroying our future for a throne built on fear. Velshara laughed. I'm saving our people from weakness, from invasion, from extinction. Elias raised his weapon, but Velshara activated a shield, blocking the shot. The two sisters stared at each other, and Kailari suddenly spoke in the old tongue, a code only the royal family knew. Her words were quick, sharp, and meant for Velshara alone. Whatever she said made her sister hesitate, her eyes narrowing. In doubt, that moment was Phileas lunged forward, knocking the weapon from her hand, and Lauren stunned her with the pulse charge. Kailari ran to Dana, who had found the core of the alien device. Can you shut it down? Dana's fingers moved fast. I think so. But this thing, it's not just a bomb. It's a beacon. It was calling. Something. Kailari's heart sank. Is it still sending? Kana nodded. Barely. But if I disable it now, we might lose the data. If we wait too long, shut it down, Kailari ordered. So we'll deal with what comes later. Dana cut the power link, and the humming stopped. The vault fell silent. No explosion, no destruction. Above, the summit continued, as if nothing had happened. Kailari turned to Velshara, who now sat against the wall, bound and furious. You've lost, Kailari said quietly. They won't forget what you almost did. Velshara sneered. They won't believe you. I'm still their queen. Elias stepped forward, holding up the holo recording from Dana's scan helmet. They'll believe this. Back aboard the Odyssey's promise. The evidence was transmitted through a secure diplomatic relay, reaching both Janari leaders and the Human Council. Within hours, The summit was halted, Valshara arrested, and an investigation launched into the deeper truths behind the device. Kailari stood on the bridge beside Elias as the stars turned slowly again. She had done the impossible not just because she had helped save 2 civilizations, but because she had found something more valuable than a crown. Elias looked at her and said, "You didn't have to do this. You could have walked away." She met his gaze and answered simply, "But humanity doesn't abandon its own. And now, neither will I." The ship turned toward the stars, its course set for new light, and Kailari stood tall, not overlooked, not forgotten, but chosen. In this time, the universe would see her clearly. Kailari stood before the High Council of the Janari Empire, the great crystal columns glowing softly behind her, casting streaks of colored light across the marble floor. But though she looked calm on the outside, her heart pounded beneath her ceremonial robes. For this was the moment everything changed, not just for her, but for her people and for humanity, too. The chamber was full, filled with nobles who had once turned their backs on her, ambassadors who whispered of peace, and soldiers who still remembered her as the daughter no one noticed, the sister no one wanted, yet now they could no longer ignore her, not after what she had done. The evidence of Valshara's betrayal had shaken the empire. Her plot to destroy the summit and ignite a war with humanity exposed by the recordings. Kailari's team had risked their lives to retrieve, and with the alien beacon neutralized, and the invaders held at bay for, now the empire faced a question no one could avoid: who would lead them next? The Queen Mother, old and sickly, had remained silent through the crisis, leaving the council divided and desperate for a figure strong enough to restore unity, but wise enough to keep the fragile alliance with Earth intact. And Kailari, once invisible, now stood at the center of it all. She had never dreamed of ruling, never wanted a throne, but fate had drawn her into a storm, and she had survived it with courage, intelligence, and loyalty, earning respect, not with bloodlines, but with action. Yet the nobles watched her with mixed eyes, some curious, others suspicious, because they knew she was not like Valshara, not ruthless, not cold, and that frightened them more than open ambition. As she spoke, her voice steady and clear, she did not promise power or dominance, but cooperation, strength through unity, and peace without weakness. And though many remained silent, others nodded slowly, hearing something they had not heard in years' hope. But peace would not come easily. After the council meeting, Kailari returned to the Odyssey's promise, her temporary home, and the place she now felt safest, greeted by Elias at the docking bay, his presence grounding her as always. He had been her anchor during the worst moments, and now he stood beside her as she prepared to face even greater challenges. "They didn't throw fruit at you," he joked gently, offering a half-smile. "That's a win in my book." She smiled back, tired but grateful. "It's not over. They'll watch my every step. One mistake, and they'll tear me down." Elias nodded. "Then don't give them a reason." But even as Kailari tried to look forward, reports began to pour in, strange readings from the deep crust of Jenner Prime, seismic patterns that didn't match any natural activity, and faint energy spikes that matched the signal from the alien beacon they had shut down. Dana brought the data to them late at night, her eyes wide. "It's not over," she said. "The device didn't just send a signal. It woke something up, and it's still down there." The words hit hard, but Kailari didn't flinch. She had faced monsters in the dark already. What was one more? With Elias, Dana, and a new team of researchers, she authorized a mission to explore the deeper caverns beneath the crystal spire, where no living Janari had walked in centuries. They used seismic drills and ancient maps, breaking through stone, to uncover what lay below, and what they found stunned the man's entire chamber. Hidden far beneath the surface, filled with black stone pillars and markings in a language none of their databases could read. At the center was a second device, larger than the first, dormant but humming with slow pulses, like a heart waiting to beat again. Kailari stepped into the chamber, her skin prickling with static, her mind filled with a strange pressure that seemed to whisper in a tongue just out of reach. Dana ran scans, frowning. "This isn't just alien," she said. "It's old, older than our senses can track, and it's thinking." Elias drew his weapon instinctively. "Thinking how?" Dana shook her head. "I don't know. But it's aware." Suddenly, the pillars began to glow faintly, and a wave of energy swept through the chamber, knocking them back. Kailari alone remained standing, her eyes locked on the device, her breath caught in her throat. For a brief second, she saw something, an image burned into her vision, of stars dying, of ships falling into black voids, of a voice whispering one word over and over: "Return." She staggered out of the chamber, her mind racing. Whatever this was, it wasn't done with them. They returned to the surface with more questions than answers. But Kailari knew one thing with certainty: the rise of a new age was coming, and the Empire could not afford to face it alone. At the next council meeting, she spoke of the discovery, not with fear, but with urgency, demanding that the Empire open its archives to human scientists and begin joint task force to understand what lay beneath their world. Some opposed her, afraid, stubborn, unwilling to trust, but others saw the wisdom in her warning, and slowly the tide turned. The people began to speak her name in the markets, the halls, the training fields, not as an insult, but with pride. "Princess Kailari," they said, "the one who saved us, the one who stood with the humans, the one who fought her sister, not for power, but for all of us." She still faced threat, shadowy figures who wanted the old ways, nobles who whispered of rebellion, but she faced them with strength, never alone, always with Elias and her new allies at her side. And when the Queen Mother finally passed into starlight, leaving the throne empty, the council did not hesitate. Ki, the unwanted princess, and bowed. She accepted not as a ruler above others, but as a leader among equals, her voice steady as she vowed to lead them through the darkness ahead. And though fear lingered, and the threat beneath the world still paused in silence, the people now believed in her, in peace, in the rise of a new kind of crown. And so, the unwanted daughter became something more than royal. It became necessary. She became hope. Elias stood at the edge of the observation deck aboard the Unity's Flame, the new joint flagship orbiting Jenner Prime, watching the stars shift slowly across the black sky. But something inside him felt heavy, like the quiet before a storm, because though peace had been declared, and Kailari now ruled with growing support, the unease in his chest told him the story wasn't finished, not yet. Whispers still filled the shadows, strange signals still pulsed from deep below the surface, and the ancient device they had found in the cavern refused to shut down completely, even under full human and Janari containment protocols. It hummed at random intervals, and each time it did, strange things happened. Dreams shared across minds, machines behaving as if they had thoughts, and once, a scout drone vanished completely, its signal cutting out as if it had fallen into nothing. Kailari had grown stronger as a leader, wiser, more confident. And the people who once called her invisible now looked to her with hope and loyalty. But Elias knew better than to trust hope alone. The unknown still watched them. One morning, Dana burst into the command chamber with a message decoded from the old devicer. Single phrase repeated in human standard characters. "The human will choose." The room went silent. Elias stared at the screen, unsure if it was a threat or a prophecy, but Kailari looked at him differently after that, as if something inside her had known this moment would come. The scientists could not explain how the device knew Elias, how it had chosen him, or Why his DNA signature triggered parts of the alien technology that ignored everyone else. All they knew was that the stars themselves had started to react. Across the edge of explored space, telescopes picked up massive objects moving toward their quadrant, slow, silent, invisible to most sensors, but unmistakably real land. The two ancient records in the Gennari archives, long dismissed as myths, spoke of a race that once fed on stars. Beings made of void and silence, awakened only when another species reached a certain point of knowledge. Elias didn't want to believe it. He was just a man, just a pilot, a soldier, a survivor, but the signals pointed to him, and the device's core only responded to his voice. Kalari ordered the chamber to be sealed, and a final test was conducted. Elias entered alone, surrounded by crystal plates, humming energy and symbols that glowed brighter with every step he took. The moment he reached the center, everything stopped. Then the voice returned, not in words, but in pure feeling, filling his mind with visions of what was coming. He saw the future, or 1,000 possible futures, some full of war, others of peace, many ending in fire. But one thread remained in all of them: his decision would matter. He stumbled out of the chamber, pale and shaking, and Kalari caught him before he fell. "What did you see?" she asked softly, and he could barely speak. "A choice," he whispered. "Not just mine. Everyone's. But I have to start it." News of the ancient threat spread quickly, not through panic, but through quiet preparation. Earth sent fleets, Jenna raised defenses, but no weapon could guarantee survival, not when facing something that fed on solar systems. It was Elias who proposed something radical. "What if we don't fight?" he said. "What if we speak?" The idea stunned everyone. Speak to a force beyond time. Parley with creatures that didn't even understand life the way they did. But Kalari trusted him. She always had. And so a plan was made, a transmission sent through the device, written in both emotion and logic, encoded in music. Memory and meaning, not just words. Elias wrote it himself, working with poets, scientists, and diplomats, pouring human pain, triumph, love, and sacrifice into the message. It was a risk, maybe the last one they'd get. The signal was sent. Days passed. Nothing came. Then, the stars near the edge of the galaxy shimmered unnaturally, and a rift opened, not violent, but smooth, like a curtain being drawn back. From it emerged a shape, vast and incomprehensible, but it did not attack. Instead, a single stream of energy descended, landing in the containment chamber where Elias had first stood. The device flared to life, not with warning, but welcome. A voice filled the room, not human, not Gennari, but shaped to be understood. One stood, one chose, not fear, not hunger, but harmony. "We see you now." The tension broke across every command deck, every warship, every bunker. The threat had seen their message and paused, not defeated, but delayed, perhaps redirected. A conversation had begun where war could have started. Elias stood at the center of it all, the man who had chosen to speak instead of strike, and, in doing so, had bought time, hope, and maybe something even greater: understanding. Across both human and Gennari worlds, his name was now spoken with not as a warrior, but as a changer of paths. Children learned his story. Leaders studied his choices. And Kalari stood beside him always, never as his shadow, but as his equal, for they had risen together from a place of being unwanted, unseen, and had turned that into power, purpose, and peace. Years later, as the stars continued to move, and new threats rose and faded, one truth remained clear: a single human, overlooked by fate, had reached into the unknown and changed the course of the stars, not with five, but with faith. And the universe would never be the same again.